This week on Brio TV, the podcast, two guys who spent decades covering television talk about everything from best classic sitcoms to worst ever interviews. Plus, we ask the eternal question, Ginger or Marianne? Hi there, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Bill Brio. On this episode, we continue our summer-long series, Talking to Fellow TV Critics. My guest today is Marc Berman, known to many of his faithful readers, of which I am one, as Mr. Television. Marc is probably best known as the creator and editor of the digital publication, The Programming Insider. Check it out daily. He really was an insider, starting his career at companies such as NBC, QVC, Paramount, and Viacom in programming and research. He was such a vital numbers guy, Jay Leno used to call him daily to quiz him on the overnights. Hey, Marc, how's my overnights? And he continues to write for a variety of outlets, such as Forbes, The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, The New York Post, and most recently, Inc. Me and Marc get so into it, I've extended this conversation into 2 episodes and borrowed, ripped off, a format used by TCM host Ben Mankiewicz on his very entertaining podcast, The Plot Thickens. Ben likes to finish his conversations by asking his Super 8 movie-related questions. Now, when I hear Super 8, I think of those smaller reels of film used for home movies back in the days before VCRs and DVDs. I still collect the larger gauge of the 16mm films. So I asked Marc my Super 16 set of TV questions. Clever, huh? So sit back, get comfortable, and brace yourselves for 2 fun and nostalgic episodes from Berman and Brio. So we've known each other then for 30 years. My math is terrible, almost 30 years. Yeah.
It's technically 27 years.
27 years. And I've always admired your passion for television. I just love that you love TV. And it shows every time. It shows in your room, in your office. But you just have a great spirit about it all, going back to all your career. And we'll get to the many facets of your career in covering TV and working in television. And of course, people can find you, as I do, every day at the Programming Insider, which has always been a go-to spot for me since you launched it, maybe 30 years ago as well, Marc, right?
I launched it. I started, and thank you very much for the nice comments, Bill. And by the way, right back at you, because you and I share a common love for this business, and we're in the same age range, if not the same age. So we remember all the old shows.
Right.
I was hired for a freelance magazine, not a freelance magazine, a trade magazine called Mediaweek.
Right.
And I was hired to write for their new website. And the first day they said, "What is it you want to do?" And I said, "I want to do an email newsletter." They said, "What's that?" and I explained, because there was nobody doing them. And I started doing it at my prior job, it kind of got me into Mediaweek. Mediaweek came to me and said, "We want to hire you." And I wasn't a journalist at the time. And so they said, "What do you want to call it?" I said, "Well, I want to have something programming in the title, and I'm an insider." And they said, "What about Programming Insider?" And here it is, 27 years later. I'm still writing this thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Crazy.
And it's a lot of fun. You get every day the historical milestones on that day for television and also for other things, rock and roll and music and things. But there's great trivia questions at the end. And so I always love reading it. It's a lot of fun. Marc, listen, I don't know. We've devised this 16-question questionnaire for you today. We talked about how we both are fans of Ben Mankiewicz at Turner Classic Movies. They have a great podcast there, The Plot Thickens. And he's starting in season 3 to ask the Super 8 questions of his guests. So I thought, well, I collect 16mm films, not Super 8mm, so I'm going to ask 16 questions. So we got 16 questions for you.
I'm ready to go.
And so we'll start with the questions, and we're going to talk about everything else probably as we talk about these. So here we go. Um, so I'm always curious about this. Was there an early memory of a TV series or a personality that made you maybe subliminally someday think, man, I'd love to write about television or be involved in this business? What was it that turned you on?
I know the exact moment. I have the exact moment, but I will tell you this. My mother used to tell me when I was a baby, she'd put me by the TV set and she said, we literally could have gone out to dinner, to a movie and stayed up hours and you'd still be watching television. So it started back then, but yeah, there is a moment. I'll never forget the moment. I was a teenager. It was the summer of 1974. I was like 15 or 16, 15. And I was reading. I always gravitated to the TV section. I have to see what's happening on TV. And this was in May, and ABC announced they were canceling all these shows. And they canceled the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, amongst others. And then I thought to myself, they canceled the Brady Bunch because that was my go-to show, one of the many. And it just dawned on me that, wow, this is an interesting business because I really want to be a network programmer. I want to work for a network and I want to pick out shows and I want to schedule them. And I started doing these mock schedules and it just fascinated me that, oh my God, the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family are being canceled. And there was another, and as a runner-up, there was a show. Do you remember a show called The Texas Wheelers? Remember that show?
Oh, it was a short faint bell. Yeah, no, not really.
It was a short-lived sitcom on ABC. Well, with somebody named an actor named Jack Elam
Of course, yeah, Jack Elam.
And it was canceled. ABC yanked it off the schedule. And then suddenly that summer they put it on, or later in the year, they put it on another night to test. And I thought, well, why would they cancel it and move it? And then I remember when I watched Room 222, suddenly it wasn't on anymore. What happened to it? So those were the things that really got me. But I would have to say it was the moment when I found out the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family were canceled. I said, I want to be a network programmer. I want to run a network.
Wow.
That's what I wanted.
Well, that should have happened. It would have been very interesting. I would have watched that network. I loved Room 222. For me, there was 3 shows that started in 1969. There was many shows, but scripted shows, and one of them was Room 222, but The Courtship of Eddie's Father. And there was you'll know this one, but most will have forgotten, My World and Welcome to It with William Wyndham. And was sort of based on James Thurber's comic strips, right? I thought those 3, and I wasn't that old, but I still thought, wow, we've stepped it up here a notch. This is different. It seemed a little more sophisticated. And so I always thought that was an interesting year, for TV to sort of be changing a bit.
I will say one thing, the 60s was a fascinating decade because there was so much. But the one show that I remember that I was glued to, I was glued to like a lot of shows. I loved Julia. I thought with Diane Carroll,
right.
even as a young child, I really thought it was ahead of its time. I really thought they tackled issues that, that other shows never did. And I just thought that was, and I remember with Lloyd Nolan. And here's the sad thing about shows like this, Bill. You look at shows like that and you think Lloyd Nolan was. Julia worked for him. He was an old man. He was this. I looked to see, well, how old was Lloyd Nolan then? I'm like, oh my God, I'm older than he was.
Younger than we are. Exactly. It's a shattering experience. Julia, if you look at I think the titles to that show are really hip and new. I don't know, was that a Quincy Jones theme song? The people behind it were really cutting edge, smart people. So it had a lot going for it for sure. And the fact that was she the first African American to headline a scripted show in the States, right?
Yes, she was. When you think about, there were different trendsetters, but back then, the image was, a domestic or, they weren't really treated. Now, here was this independent widowed woman who had a young child, and she worked as a nurse and she was a professional. And it really was. And one of the interesting episodes, which is really fascinating, Susan Olsen, before the Brady Bunch, guest starred, and she played a bigoted young girl. And I remember her dealing with Mark Kopach as, Corey, Julia's child. And it's interesting because a friend of mine recently had lunch with Mark Kopach, and I'm like, you had lunch with Mark Kopach? Oh my God, that's huge. And most people will say, who? Who's Mark Kopach? But Mark Kopach should be going to all these nostalgia shows that I go to. He would be a draw for people like me.
For sure.
I would gravitate right to his table. Definitely.
When you see some of the folks, you and I, we've gone, there's a show in Los Angeles all the time, Hollywood show, I think it's called now, Hollywood Collector Show. And they might have 60, 70 former TV stars there. And I used to go back in the day and see a lot of the 60s ones who aren't with us anymore, sadly. But I remember there was one guy in a booth, and he was the voice of Charlie Brown from 1986 to 87. In other words, he did a TV commercial once as the voice of Charlie Brown. It was ridiculous that he had a booth there. He was next to the Dallas cast that wasn't on the Dallas remake. It's nuts who you might see there. So it is always fun.
You never know who's going to show up. There was a girl. I was just at the Chiller. Chiller is a biannual event here. It's in New Jersey, and I just recently started going, and I met like Dee Wallace from E.T., the mother on E.T. Donna Mills was there last year. You meet so many people. And then I have in the back. You might see in the back there, but I have pictures of myself with all these these classic TV people.
Yeah,
and it's just a fascinating experience.
It's a good one. When you meet Donna Mills and she kind of looks the same, it makes you feel younger, right?
I said to her, I said, you look exactly the same. And she's 85 years old.
Oh, my goodness, right?
And she said, oh, I wish that was true. But let's just be realistic, Bill.
Yeah.
We don't know what they look like when they get up in the morning.
Right.
Because if you look at Joan Collins is 91 years old. I mean, she looks like Alexis from Dynasty still, like from back in the late 80s.
Right.
Nothing, but we don't know when they get up. We don't know.
We don't know. I don't know if they're all original parts there. You're right. But it's still, we appreciate the effort. So I forgive me. What was the show again? That one that made you want to get into television? It was, the
real answer, I'm going to say the answer's got to be the Brady Bunch. And you know what, Bill, I will say this. When I watched the Brady Bunch, I basically, and I know this is going to sound crazy, if I ever write my book, I will explain this.
Yeah.
I didn't just watch the Brady Bunch. I was in that house. I really transformed myself. And I would think to myself, why don't I live in this groovy house with all these siblings and Alice?
Yeah.
Why am I living in a little crummy apartment with screaming, chain-smoking parents? What is this? I want to be in, and then
that sounds like a better show, actually.
When Mike and Carol that was the nanny. I mean, my mother was like the nannies, was Renee Taylor.
Oh, my God.
I remember thinking, why don't I have parents that sit me down and talk to me instead of being, what is this? And I want Alice. I want pork chops and applesauce. I want all the things the Brady kids had, including that fake turf in the backyard. But they were irresponsible, Bill. Tiger disappeared. Nobody said anything.
Oh,
and where was Fluffy? The cat disappeared.
We'll be back in a moment with Marc Berman.
Must somehow form a family. That's the way we all became the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. That's the way we became the Brady Bunch.
What's new this summer on Paramount Plus Canada? Well, get set to be all shook up by epic Elvis Presley in concert, which will make its streaming debut July 24th exclusively on Paramount Plus in Canada. The film is already running on Paramount Plus in the U.S. From director Baz Luhrmann, this film invites audiences to experience Elvis Presley like never before, featuring long-lost footage from his legendary Las Vegas residency in the 1970s, alongside rare 16mm footage from Elvis on tour and treasured 8mm film from the Graceland archive. This footage was restored by Peter Jackson, who worked miracles bringing the Beatles' Let It Be footage back to life for Get Back. Epic has also garnered widespread critical acclaim, with Vogue calling it, quote, a burst of concert film adrenaline, and Time praising its profoundly intimate approach. Check it out this summer exclusively on Paramount Plus. And we're back with Programming Insider Marc Berman. Have you been to the Brady house? You can visit it now and take tours.
Yes,
right?
I've been. Well, I will tell you something really groovy, Bill.
Yeah.
I recently, my wife and I and my younger daughter were in L.A. For the last in-person press tour. We finally went to the Brady house. Last summer, I did an event. I was at Hofstra University here in Long Island.
Wow.
They had a chocolate expo with 4 cast members from the Brady Bunch. 4 of the now, the kids who are now my age, whatever, our age.
Yeah.
And I was on stage doing Brady Bunch trivia.
Oh, fantastic! I bet you knew more than they did, right?
Well, it was funny because I probably did. I'm not gloating here, but I interviewed Barry Williams prior to it, and I asked him a question that I thought he would think was so ridiculous. And I said, I've always wondered, because one of my trivia questions is, which Brady kid did not wear braces? And did you wear braces? And I'm thinking Barry's going to say, what kind of nut is this? But no, he methodically answered and explained. And I remember taking my younger daughter years ago to BradyCon, which was like a Comic-Con for the Brady Bunch. And she at the time was maybe 10 years old. And she walks in and she's like, oh my God, they're so old. I said, but they're my age. They're not what they were back then,
It throws kids. When my daughter was very, very young, she might have been 4 or 5, they had a Beatles convention in Toronto at a hotel near the airport. And, I'd already started kind of brainwashing her into the Beatles at a very early age. So we walked around, all these collectors selling stuff. We could hear at the end of the hall, there was Beatle music playing, and they were playing a movie downstairs in the cinemas there. Anyway, I said, Katie, do you want to see the Beatles? And she's so excited. So we got in there, and so we sit down, and there's this black and white scratchy print of A Hard Day's Night on the screen, and she's very, very quiet. And the movie, we saw the last 20 minutes, the movie ended, and she turned to me and said, Dad, are the Beatles dead? I always thought, oh no, how do I explain this? I said, well, no, not.
It's funny because I recently had a very exciting experience. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but you won't think I'm nuts.
No,
I met Jerry Rochelle at Schiller. She played Fake Jan in the Brady Bunch Hour.
Wow! And
I wrote a feature when I was writing for Forbes. I did a feature on her, and she was very nice. We hugged, and she was so excited to meet me, and I was so excited to meet her. And I just had to run to Facebook. I just met Fake Jan, and every January 4th, I make a big deal out of Fake Jan. January 2nd, because she's January 2nd.
Oh, Jan. Brilliant! That's brilliant.
And she built a career out of an 8-episode fiasco. She has built a career around it. She's a wonderful lady, wonderful.
When you write your book, the title should be When I Met Fake Jan. I think that would be
No, I have. No, my title will be, the beginning of my title will be TV Saved My Life, because it did. TV saved my life.
How so? Tell us that story.
I'm going to be very honest, Bill. I'm going to be very honest with you. When I was, there was a very, very, very difficult time. Something happened. I won't get into it, but it was very difficult. I didn't have anyone to turn to. I didn't have anyone because my friends couldn't relate to it, and I didn't have anyone. So what I did was I went out. I bought my first VCR, which at the time was this big, like this big,
right?
$600.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'll never forget, the first show I taped was the Jeffersons, and I had this thing like a cord where you could, and I just couldn't believe you would rewatch a show. So my favorite show then and now is The Waltons. And when I was feeling down, I would watch an episode of The Waltons, and I would watch over and over and over again. And it really saved my life. It was my therapist. Back then you didn't go for help because you were considered nuts. Who goes for help?
Right.
And I made a promise to myself that at some point in my life, I'm going to meet these people and tell them what they did for me. And I have met a lot of them, and I told them.
Wow.
And I know it sounds ridiculous, but TV saved my life, because I would watch The Waltons. I would watch Little House on the Prairie. I would watch, shows that I loved that made me feel good. Maybe it just was there for me that I didn't have, and it really helped me.
Mark,
and it still does, by the way. What
is the reaction when you tell, John Boy, or that this story that show helped you through a difficult time. What do they say?
I told Richard Thomas this, and I told Michael Lerner, and I told Mary McDonough, Judy Norton. Their basic response is, that's such a lovely story. And Judy, I met Judy, Mary of all the Waltons, she played Erin. She's the one that I got to know the best. Like, I consider her a friend. Just a wonderful lady. I've interviewed her. But I remember Judy and I Judy does a wonderful YouTube. She does a little wrap up, of episodes of the Brady Bunch. And it's on Facebook, on YouTube.
Yeah.
And she puts it on Facebook. And I remember we were going back and forth on Facebook, and I did, I mentioned it, and she's like, "Oh my God, I that makes me feel so good." And it's absolutely true, Bill. I'm telling you. And even now, when I'm stressed and I feel like, I will sit down and watch, My Three Sons. I will watch Hazel, and I feel like I'm taken back to a time where it saved my life back then. It really did. I don't know what I would have done without the Waltons, who felt like my family. But, I didn't know them. I just watched them. But now I know a lot of them.
Yeah. No, it does definitely. I found that when, this is an odd example, but when Roseanne came back for the second run as the Connors, but it was just Roseanne again for a little while, it was really heartening, whether or not you liked that show or liked her, to me, to sort of see them 2 decades later, still kind of, they're in trouble, that family, they had to muddle through, but it was just that connection to this family that you were invested in many years ago. It was like seeing relatives you hadn't seen for many years, right?
Yes.
It's sort of that way. So TV does that connection that like nothing else. All right. Well, speaking of the Waltons, question number 2, they've just brought back the Waltons and Little House. Is there a series from the past you would love to see revived again?
I don't normally like to see shows revived. I feel like you can't go home again. It's never as good as the original. But there is one that I think could be done. I'd like to see a new version of St. Elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like they could do it. And would they bring back original characters? I don't know. But I mean, Ed Begley might. I mean, look, they're older now. Maybe Ed Begley could do it. He played Ehrlich, or maybe Howie Mandel would pop in. I just think there's more stories to tell. And that was such a wonderful, ahead of its time, quirky dramedy, because there was comedy within the drama. And I feel like that's the one show that I would, and I'll be honest with you also, when there was talk of doing another 30-something focused on the next generation with, the parents coming in, I guess, occasionally, I thought maybe they could do that also. Maybe that could be a good one to do as well, because I always felt shortchanged that 30-something only aired for 4 seasons. And I talked to Ken Olin about that. Yeah. He said the writers felt like they were running out of stories. So those are the 2 that I would say. That maybe I think the main one is St. Elsewhere.
But if 30-something came back, would it be 70-something? Would it be with the same actors?
Well, it's 60 and 70. Here's when 30-something began, I was on the cusp of 30. And there were episodes that were so, when Mel's mother came to visit, I'm like, oh my God, this is like me with my mother coming to, and it's, there was so many things that I could relate to back then with them. So yes. And now, the reality of this life is 60-something. So, it is what it is. So, but I could say I would watch again. I would give it a shot.
They could visit one of the cast members in jail. And unbelievable.
I know.
We'll move on. Look, William Daniels is still alive from St. Elsewhere, isn't he?
William Daniels is 99. He's married to Bonnie Bartlett.
Yeah.
They just celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary. And remember Norman Lloyd, Dr. Orthlander?
Yes, yeah.
I believe he lived to 106.
106, absolutely.
And when I met Ed Begley Jr. a number of years ago, at the time, he must have been about 103.
Wow.
And I said, do you still talk to Norman Lloyd? He said, I talk to him every week. And I said, is he still with it? He said, I don't know what he has, but I want this.
Yeah. He stayed sharp. A friend of mine runs a film festival, Cinecon in L.A., and Stan Taffel, and they had Norman Lloyd as a guest, I think, when he was 104 on stage taking questions.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, pretty spry. Okay, let's go on to the next question. You know what I'd like to see brought back? I think they could do is the courtship of Eddie's father. I'd like to see that one. I'd be curious about the cast.
I love the show, and I feel like 3 seasons wasn't enough. But the reason I believe it ended was Bill Bixby was at odds with the creator on the direction of the show,
Absolutely.
James Comack, and they decided to end it. I feel like, but you know what, Bill? Here's the thing you have to remember: a show like Courtship of Eddie's Father only aired for 3 seasons, but that was a lot of episodes. You know, you had a show like The Munsters, 2 seasons, you had 72 episodes or something like that.
Right.
Now,
incredible.
if you watch a streaming show, a show like Hacks runs for 5 seasons, you maybe get 40-something episodes. You don't get a lot.
Right, exactly. And the thing, too, that's limiting with something like Courtship is when the kid starts aging into 12, 13, it's not the same show, right? There's sort of a golden window for something like that, I think. Same with like the Wonder Years, right?
Well, exactly.
Okay. Who was the first TV star you ever interviewed?
I'm going to tell you who it was, and it's my all-time favorite story to tell. Aaron Spelling from the creator of...
Wow.
And I'm going to tell you this. I'll tell you this briefly. It's such a fun story. I had just started at Mediaweek. I was only there maybe a few months. And I was doing my newsletter, and I was freelancing for the magazine at the time, but I was working for the website. And I was writing this freelance story, and I needed to get a producer on the phone. And I thought, wait a minute, Candy Spelling gets my newsletter. I have her email address. So I sent Candy Spelling an email and introduced myself, told her how much I admired her husband. Is there any possibility I could get him on the phone? That night, the phone rings. I'm in the shower, which get that vision out of your mind. But my wife's screaming, Aaron Spelling's on the phone. Like, he's on the phone? So I get out of the shower, I get on the phone. We immediately connected, and he kept saying to me, I remember, because, you know, I know a lot about his shows, and he kept saying to me, Mark, how do you know this about all my shows? And then I said, well, Mr. Spelling. And then he said, who's Mr. Spelling? My name is Aaron. And I said to him, well, Mr. Spelling, no, Aaron. Aaron, would you be willing to do a Q&A with me? Because I'm sure they would make it the cover story. He said he would do it if I did it. And I got to know him. I pitched him a show idea. He said, I love it. He said, if you trust me enough, write me a treatment. I'm going to take it out. And he said, I'm going to make you a very wealthy person. I said, oh my God, I'm screaming to my wife, we're going to be rich. We're like the Beverly Hillbillies. We're moving to, California. And then you know what happened? You know what happened? He died.
Oh.
What wonderful. He was oh my God, a wonderful man.
So glad you had that experience. Wow, that's cool.
Wonderful. And he said to me, I'm not Aaron Spelling anymore. I said, well, who are you? He said, I'm Tori Spelling's father. That's what people know me as now.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Wow. Well, that's a cool story. It is meeting legends like that. That's for that to be your very first interview. I think mine was, and I'm not 100% sure, but you remember the Little Rascals and Laurel and Hardy. They were all done at Hal Roach Studios, and I talked to Hal Roach Sr., the guy who was the producer.
Wow.
And he was well into his 90s, but very sharp. And when I was hired, the big trend at TV Guide was colorization. And there was a place in Toronto that did a lot of it, and it was terrible. It looked like somebody had taken a wet crayon, and the colorization wasn't very good because computers weren't fast or smart enough at that point. But anyway, I asked Hal Roach about colorizing Laurel and Hardy films, and he goes, well, let me ask you a question. Do you read the funnies? And I said, the comics in the newspaper? Yeah, I absolutely love the comics. And he goes, well, you know how in Monday to Friday they're in black and white, and on Sunday they're in color? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, do you just laugh on Sunday? And I thought, oh my God, this is the wisdom from the gods. This is incredible. I couldn't believe it's a quote I'll never forget. And yeah, so those first ones make a deep impression, don't they, Mark?
Well, Bill, I'll tell you, you're gonna think I'm making this up, but it's true. First of all, I have a lot of little our gang memorabilia. I met Tommy Bond years ago when I worked at QVC,
Yeah.
and he autographed a set of VCR tapes from I then had two children. Now I have three.
Yeah.
I swear to you, I watch Our Gang every morning because I tape. MeTV2 has a 3-hour comedy block with Laurel and Hardy, Our Gang, the Three Stooges, and Betty Boop.
Yeah.
And Popeye. But my favorite is Laurel and Hardy and Our Gang. I still watch them all the time.
Yeah.
I
I have several episodes on 16 millimeter, and they never get old. They're just always funny, and it shows you some of those films are 100 years old now. Almost. So it's just shows you when we talk about shows from the 60s. There was stuff 40 years earlier that we were laughing at, and still has value. More with programming insider Marc Berman after this short message. Well, we're here with Dr. Emily Gagne of Hollywood Suite. Doctor, what do you prescribe this month for your viewers?
Well, it's franchise frenzy season, Bill. So we've got lots of iconic films from different franchises. One of my personal favorite franchises, Austin Powers.
Oh, I love that series, yeah.
One of the best.
Aren't they making a new one?
They sure are. So no better time to be revisiting the first three films.
Well timed. That's awesome. That's great. So what other franchises do you have?
We got the Ocean series, which I know a lot of people like. And for the kids out there, we've got all the Twilight films are back on the surface.
Oh, my goodness. So we've got the sky above and the ocean below.
Exactly, Bill.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Now, you've got some series news, though, coming up in the month following, right?
Yes, we're going to have some new episodes of our original series, Cinema A to Z. We've got some great topics this time, like party films, creature features, sports films, and my personal favorite, witches.
Well, that's all coming on Hollywood Suite. Emily, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
And we're back. We're going to have to motor through these questions here. Has anybody ever tracked you down, and I know this is true, and called you after you wrote or posted something they didn't like?
Yes, there were two people in particular I remember. There's more, but these two. Yeah. The first one was an actress named Paula Marshall.
Oh, yeah.
Paula was doing a comedy called Gary Unmarried, and I made a snarky remark and said that, because people knew her as a series killer because every show she didn't last past like 13 episodes.
Yeah.
And she sent me an email and she said, "Aren't you very clever and original? And you really are an asshole." And so what happened was I was in LA and I went to the CBS party. My wife was with me, and there was Paula Marshall. And I went over to her and we laughed and we hugged and we have since become friends. And the second one, which we never laughed and hugged, this didn't happen. There's an actor named David Krumholtz. Do you know who he is?
Oh, for sure. Yes. What was that show where you add up all the numbers? Numbers, wasn't that it?
It was called Numbers.
Yeah.
With Judd Hirsch.
Yeah.
He was doing a sitcom called Partners, and I panned it. And he tweeted something attacking me. He's sick and tired of people who know nothing that think they know everything. And we had a Twitter battle. And I always say, and I always tell this to my son, who's he's in show business. I always say any kind of feedback's positive feedback. If they love you, that's great. If they hate you, that's not bad either because they're reading your stuff.
Yeah.
So I had a network executive crying on the phone one time. She called me crying. She was very upset at something I said, but we'll leave that at where it was. But I get very flattered when people react, whether it's good or bad. And I had somebody once created a Twitter account on me called Fake Marc Berman. And he would make fun of me like every day, I know who did it. And I thought it was funny initially. And then after about 3 months, I started to say, this is kind of stupid. And then it had a picture of me with like my face was a chipmunk. Do I look like a chipmunk?
No.
I used to watch Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah, you look more like Dave Seville. Yeah, no, it's kind of flattering. I wish somebody would do a fake me, and then I could stop. Like I could just, okay, there you go, read that guy, and I'll take the credit.
Well, you're the most likable guy that I've ever met. I can't imagine anyone not loving you. You're just.
Well, I'll give you an example. It does happen. There was, I wrote about, there was a Michael Jackson special, sort of almost a comeback, and he had Bubbles the Chimp and Cher and, a bunch of people on. And I guess I did probably take some cheap shots at that opportunity, but I really did think it was a bad TV special. And I get this, and of course, you write about Michael Jackson, you get a lot of response, especially then. So I got a lot of response. And one was from this person, and they said, I'm going to hunt you down and find you and kill you with a 2x4. And I thought, oh. So I passed that on to human resources at the Toronto Sun at the time. And I said, I'm not really taking this seriously. But anyway, a day or two later, I get an email from this man. And he said, listen, I'm just getting in touch. My daughter, who's 13, sent you a message, and she's been she can't watch TV for a month or something. But anyway, it was this young girl who was really upset, and so, but she sort of threatened to kill me. So I just couldn't believe that the father got in touch, and that at least made me feel better.
Yeah, that's good.
No. All right, now here's another similar. Well, I don't know. They say don't meet your heroes. What celebrity has disappointed you the most? If there's somebody you've interviewed and you thought, oh, damn, I wish I hadn't interviewed them.
Well, it just happened recently. I'm going to tell you who it was before this person, because for years I always gave the same answer. It was Ellen DeGeneres originally.
Okay.
I sat down with Ellen before her daytime talk show premiered at Nappy. And it was one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. It was awful. And this was before anyone ever said, because everybody loved Ellen. She dances. She's this, she's that.
Right.
But this is so shocking to me, who I'm going to tell you. I think you're going to be surprised. I love interviewing classic stars. So when I have an opportunity, even if I don't have to, I want to interview them. I had the opportunity, which was terrible, to interview Stephanie Powers.
Oh,
who
yeah.
we know from Heart.
Yeah.
Stephanie does, she's involved in a organization in Kenya in the name of her former partner, William Holden. And I thought this would be so wonderful because I'm a big fan. I loved William Holden's work, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. And one of the things I love to do with classic stars is I like to throw something out to them that I know about them that they're going to say, I can't believe you remember I did that show. And I was all set to talk about the Feather and Father Gang that she did after Heart to Heart. She was just awful.
Wow.
Everything I said, she was sarcastic. She was short. I'll give you one example. I said, would you say that Heart to Heart was probably the centerpiece of your career? And she paused and said, excuse me? I don't understand your question. I said, well, would you say it was probably the one you're most... And she said, well, excuse me, I'm an actress. I've done movies. I've done television. I've done theater. I've done this. I've done that. And then she said, and I'm not really here to talk about that. And I'm like... Jeez. And it got to a point where I wanted to say to her, Stephanie, I'm going to end the interview because I'm not comfortable with this. But I decided... The publicist is very nice. I don't want to do this to the publicist. So I finished the interview and I called the publicist and I said, I can't write anything. I'm not going to do it. I can't do anything on her. So I didn't. I was stunned and disappointed. Terrible.
Well, it happens. I had an experience many years ago, and this will shock you. I was just starting at TV Guide. I was down in LA as photo editor, and I was just starting to write. I hadn't really written very much. And this is in the mid-'80s. And I was asked to get this call from Toronto. Hey, listen, can you get down to Lorimar and ask for Barry Stagg? We want you to go interview this guy. He was the lead actor in a miniseries that was shot in Toronto, and it's just about to come on pay TV. And the guy's name was Sam Neill. So this is the thing. Anybody I tell this story to says, what the hell did you do? Because Sam Neill is the nicest man who ever lived. So anyway, I go down there, and it was back before you could look at call up on YouTube and look at the trailer too, or I hadn't seen the movie because it wasn't available. There was, and they said, go today to ask to talk to this guy. And I could hardly do any research. The only research I did was directions to Lorimar, So I get down there, and he's talked to 16 people already. So I come in, and I'm Mr. Neil. Hi, I'm from Toronto. Listen, you just shot a miniseries there. Have you worked in Toronto before? How do you find that city for production? And he said, fine. I said, well, listen, it's a historical miniseries. It's set in the 1800s. Do you really look forward to putting on the clothes to being in historical dramas? And he said, not especially. And that went on for about 5 minutes, and it seemed like an hour, right? And I said to him, look, what do you want to talk about? And he said, Wales. And I said, England, France, Wales? No, like Humpback, Blue. And I was so green, I didn't know what to do. So I said, look, it's been a long day. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry we're out of gas here, but been a pleasure. And then I had to phone my editor saying, I got nothing. Today, Mark, like you, I would have just written the story about how horrible this was, right? I would have just written about that experience and made that the story. But then I didn't know enough to do that. And I encountered him a few other times after that, and always such a nice guy. So he just passed away. I feel bad telling this story, but it was just caught him on the wrong time, I guess. And there you go. Happens, right?
And no, but you know what, Bill? Here's the thing. I have other people that weren't that great to me. Like Leonard Nimoy, when I did a Star Trek piece, wasn't very cordial. However, I would say 9 out of 10, stars, particularly, are wonderful. I could go, Linda Gray and Carol Burnett. And I did a couple of years ago, I did like a Zoom interview, a thing that was on, YouTube with Sharon Gless. We went out for lunch twice. We became friendly. She met my wife, Marie Osmond. Wonderful. I could go on and on. So these are the rare occasions, but I'll give you one more clinker. Jerry Seinfeld. Oh, I met him. I didn't interview him, but boy, was he nasty to me. Wow. Oh, boy. Yeah.
That one's not such a shocker.
Yeah.
But it is nice, on the other hand, like you say. I remember talking to Dick Van Dyke a couple of times, and, oh my God, what a wonderful experience that was. And he was every bit what I had hoped he would be, right? So it's nice when it works the other way around. All right. Now, if you could move, okay, here's something that you'll have a great answer for, because I know this will be down your alley. If you could take a prop or a piece of furniture from any TV sitcom and have it part of your house, what would you take?
I thought of a number of things, and I thought of two things in particular, but the one that I really want, I want the M from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. She had, first of all, that first apartment was, if I had to pick an apartment I want, it's that one. And she had the M on the wall. When she moved to the high rise in season 6, I didn't love that apartment, but they had a scene in the first episode in the apartment where she's hanging the M. I'm Mark, it's M. She's Mary, that's M. I wanted that M and put it in my office. That's what I really want. Mary Tyler Moore is my third overall favorite show. And Valerie Harper was another angel. The other, my runner-up, if I had to pick anything, I'd love the bottle from I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, absolutely. Those are two of the best choices. I think there was a plaque on the wall next to the typewriter where Rosemarie and Dick Van Dyke worked, and it was a sheet music sheet, and I think it was the Jolly Maids. That's the one I would probably pick, because I love that show. It would be pretty cool to have that. Okay, speaking of classic television, Ginger or Marianne?
I have an easy answer, and I actually told the actress who played the character that you're the one I would pick. And her response was, well, if I was so-and-so, you would have said, I said, no, it's absolutely Marianne. Marianne. First of all, let me ask you a question, Bill. You're knowledgeable, logical. Why did Ginger bring like 3 dozen gowns on a 3-hour cruise? And Marianne had a skimpy little outfit. Why did Ginger pack all that clothing for a 3-hour cruise? It's totally Marianne. She's totally was my type. Ginger was and sadly, Tina Louise is the only surviving member. And I have some Gilligan's Island stuff right there. But Marianne, who's you? Who do you want?
Absolutely, Marianne. Marianne, because she's beautiful, but she also seemed attainable. Like Ginger, forget it. You'd have to negotiate that with an agent. So there you go. What souvenirs do you have from Gilligan's Island?
I have a Gilligan's Island picture right there with the cast that's autographed by Sherwood Schwartz and Lloyd Schwartz. And I also have a tin that has like the boat with the skipper and Gilligan on it. And when I watch TV, that's another thing. If I ever write this book, I analyze things that don't make sense, like things that I analyze. So obviously, you go on a 3-hour cruise and you don't bring, like the Howells had a basket of cash. They had a whole thing of cash. And they never seemed to miss anybody, like their loved ones. No, they never said, I miss mom, or, so.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, no, I went to one of those Hollywood collector shows, and Marianne and the professor were there, and help me with their names. Obviously,
it was Russell Johnson.
Yeah.
And Dawn Wells.
Dawn Wells, of course. And Russell Johnson was autographing photos, of course, but also autographing coconuts. So I always regretted not getting one of those. I thought that was pretty funny.
The professor was so smart, but he couldn't get them off down. But then, all these Zsa Zsa Gabor comes on, she gets off the island. All these different actors are, Don Rickles comes on, he gets off the island. And on a bit of trivia, Lloyd Schwartz told me that there was talk about doing a movie with the Brady Bunch on Gilligan's Island.
Oh, that would have been awesome. What happened? That's too bad. Oh, well. That's the thing about the Brady Bunch. It never really was canceled. They kept doing spinoffs, right? At least even animated ones.
Well, it's funny. That's exactly what Lloyd Schwartz, when I interviewed him, said, that we never ended. We never ended. And they did have another show in development. They did. Barry Williams told me this. The 6 of them were, with the exception of one, 5 of them were coming back. It was obviously either Eve Plum or Maureen O'Connor. But Maureen was not going to come back. Huh. They were going to do an updated version of the Brady Bunch now, but what happened was Susan Olsen's politics got in the way, and they decided not to move forward.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I really think that should not have been an equation in this. You believe in what you want to believe. What does it have to do with doing, so there you go.
Oh, well. Okay. Now here's a question. I think you'll have an interesting answer. Do you think we were lucky growing up when we did, in the days when we grew up, Mark, that there were only 3 or 4 networks, that we were in that little pocket of 30 years where you had to watch it on ABC, NBC, CBS?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, I say this all the time. We had 3. We had ABC, CBS, and NBC. We had PBS, which nobody watched. I didn't watch it. And they had some independent stations, but there was always something to watch. And remember, Bill, you remember this. Back then, a typical season order of episodes, it eventually became 22. But if you go back to like the 60s, it was over 30. I mean, it was. I mean, you corrected me with my 3 sons. I did something wrong on a trivia question. 12 seasons, 380 episodes. So you had a whole season of it. You started in September, you had it. Then there was always something to watch. No matter what time of the day, you would find something to watch, as opposed to now, where you have 100 options, and I'm like, I don't have anything to watch. And it was an experience. And at this time of the year, Bill, you remember this. August is almost here tomorrow. The network season's going to start in a little more than a month. We had the network jingles, we had the commercials, we had the anticipation of the new shows, the returning shows. Who shot JR? All these cliffhangers. There's nothing now.
You would get that issue of TV Guide, which was like the phone book, right? It was 3 times as thick, and everybody would be excited to see what everything looked like. And it was a special time. And now September means nothing, does it? It's just another month, another week. Yeah. My My thanks again to my friend Marc Berman, and please join us next week for part 2, where another 8 questions are asked. A lot of these questions will touch on the Television Critics Association press tours, otherwise known as the TV Death March with Cocktails. That's where me and Marc spent a few decades chasing quotes and tchotchkes. Thanks as always to producer Phil Hong, especially for his suggestion earlier this year to talk to more of my TV critic buddies. Good call, Phil. Kudos to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and the late great Steve Dudley for the original music heard on these episodes. And finally, thanks to you, listener. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.